Former Pakistan Prime Minister and Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf chairman Imran Khan has secured interim bail from the Islamabad High Court in 7 cases against him today. This after a petition was filed in the Islamabad High Court by his lawyers seeking pre-arrest bail in the multiple cases registered in different police stations in the capital. The head of Israel's largest trade union group has launched a general strike in protest against Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's plans to overhaul the judiciary. The growing resistance to the plan came hours after tens of thousands of people burst into the streets around the country in a spontaneous show of anger at Netanyahu's decision to fire his defense minister. The protests come amid a key meeting being held by Israel's Law and Justice Committee, convened amid calls to halt a contentious overhaul of the judiciary, while Israel's opposition leader Yair Lapid called upon the government to halt Netanyahu's plan. A meeting of the European Gas Conference in Vienna was met with protests as climate activists accused participants of being war and inflation profiteers. The meeting is happening in the midst of the climate crisis with more than 250 attendees in attendance there. According to the European Gas Conference, the meeting will address the long-term role of natural gas in Europe and its position in the transition to help reach net zero targets. Myanmar's junta chief has vowed to continue cracking down on opponents once and for all and hold elections. He was speaking at the Armed Forces Day Parade. Massed formations of members of all branches of the services marched onto a huge parade ground in the capital. They were backed by armored vehicles, missiles and artillery, and overflown by jet fighters and helicopters. Kenyan police are on high alert ahead of the second round of anti-government protests organized by the opposition that has been termed as illegal by the government. According to the police chief, insists that Monday's protests are illegal, but the opposition leader Raila Odinga says Kenyans have a right to demonstrate. The opposition is protesting against the rising cost of living and calling for President William Ruto's resignation, saying he wasn't validly elected in last year's election. Former Taiwan president departed for a 12-day tour of China. He said he was very happy to travel to China in the first cross-strait visit by a current or former leader of the island in more than 70 years. The ex-president said he is bringing some college students from Taiwan for communication with mainland students, hoping that the current atmosphere across the strait could be improved. He is visiting China in his capacity. It comes amid rising tensions between Taiwan and China. More than 180 Rohingya Muslims arrived by boat in Indonesia's Aceh province today. This is the latest group among hundreds who have fled by boat from desperate conditions in Myanmar and in camps in Bangladesh. According to the United Nations Refugee Agency, 2022 may have been one of the deadliest years at sea in almost a decade for the Rohingyas, a persecuted religious and ethnic minority in Myanmar.
Betul Tuhan, saya tak bawa jumpa. Kenapa mau jadi pengungsi lagi? Kenapa mau film ni saya bawa?
The Australian government has taken a major step towards implementing a key climate policy in a bid to force greenhouse gas polluters to reduce emissions. The centre-left Labour Party has said that safeguard mechanism reforms are essential to Australia reaching its target of reducing its emissions by 43% below 2005 levels by the end of the decade. The reforms could create a ceiling on the nation's emissions and force Australia's 215 biggest polluting facilities to reduce their emissions over time. With the support of the Greens' 11 senators, the government only needs the backing of 2 unaligned or minor party senators to get reforms through the upper chamber.
Smaller. Today is a very good day.
Officials in the US have said that death toll has gone up to 7 in the powerful explosion that had taken place at a chocolate factory in a small town in eastern Pennsylvania. An investigation into the cause of the building explosion is currently underway. Botswana's former president Ian Khama has vowed to spearhead a campaign to oust his hand-picked successor, Mogwitz. Now a bitter rival, Khama has accused him of being a threat to democracy in next year's elections. The 70-year-old Khama governed one of Africa's most stable democracies and its top diamond-producing nation for a decade until 2018, before handing the reins to Masisi, then his deputy. South Africa-based Khama now accuses Masisi of authoritarianism and has said he regrets having appointed him as his successor.
Morning. Good morning.
Ammar Al-Khudairi, the chairman of Saudi National Bank, which was the main shareholder of troubled lender Credit Suisse before its buyout, has resigned. A statement published on the Saudi Stock Exchange says he resigned due to personal reasons. The development comes just days after his comments had triggered a slump in the Swiss lender's shares. More than 1,500 people have been evacuated as a major forest fire rages in Spain's eastern Castellón province. Although the fire started on Thursday, it still continues to rage. Firefighters claim that they now have it under control and it had not expanded overnight. The fire broke out in a province between Valencia and Teruel and has consumed 4,000 hectares of land. According to emergency services, 8 villages had been evacuated as well as a home for older people in Montan. Meanwhile, Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez has promised the government's full support to those who had to flee their homes. US aircraft carrier USS Nimitz staged combined naval exercises with South Korea in international waters off the southern island of Jeju. This comes after North Korea fired 2 short-range ballistic missiles off its east coast. The US carrier is scheduled to arrive at a South Korean naval base in Busan tomorrow in its first docking in South Korea in nearly 6 years, partly to mark the 70th anniversary of the alliance. North Korea has fired 2 more ballistic missiles into the sea off its east coast this morning. According to South Korea's military, this is the latest in a series of launches amid military drills by the US and South Korea. Japanese Coast Guard has said the missiles most likely landed outside its exclusive economic zone. Japanese media say missiles flew to an altitude of 50 kilometers and covered a range of 350 kilometers, while Japanese Chief Cabinet Secretary has said North Korea's missile launches are a threat to the peace and safety of Japan and the international community. Russia has said that it will investigate who was behind blasts that damaged the Nord Stream gas pipelines and would do everything to stop what it called Western efforts to cover up what happened. A Russian diplomat said that Moscow may seek compensation for the pipeline damage, but did not specify from whom. The pipelines, which connect Russia and Germany under the Baltic Sea, were hit by unexplained blasts last September in 2022 in what Moscow called an act of international terrorism. Japan has called on China to quickly release a Japanese national who has been detained in Beijing. Country's chief cabinet secretary has said Chinese authorities had informed Japan this month that a man in his 50s had been detained for violating Chinese law. An Astellas Pharma spokesperson confirmed to news agency Reuters that the Japanese man detained in China was an employee of the company. Meanwhile, China has said that the man had been detained on charges of espionage. Heavy rains flooded streets of the city of Najaf in southern Iraq. Cars, shops and workplaces were submerged in water because of the unexpected downpour. Several families were forced to leave their homes in the Al Amir neighborhood, which was worst hit by the flood.